Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be diving deep into something, well, pretty heavy.
Yeah.
It's suffering, and how to find hope and strength in the midst of it. We'll be drawing from, a text that explores finding that resilience through faith.
Suffering can be so isolating.
Yeah.
You really feel like you're the only one who's going through something so difficult.
Right.
But what this text really highlights is that everyone suffers.
Right. It's universal.
Yeah, it's a human experience, no matter your background or beliefs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
One of the things that really stood out to me right at the beginning of this text was this whole idea of God being close to the brokenhearted.
Right.
Something we hear a lot, that phrase from Psalm 34.18.
Yeah.
But what does it actually mean, when you're really in it, when you're in the thick of suffering?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's easy to just gloss over those words, but
Yeah.
think about what it really feels like when you're feeling completely broken, lost, alone.
Yeah.
What does it mean to sense a presence, a comfort, a strength that's even bigger than yourself?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not always a physical thing, is it?
Right. No, it's more like, it's like when you're a kid and you've fallen and scraped your knee and your parent comes over and hugs you.
Yeah.
It doesn't take away the pain, but it feels less scary.
Right.
Less overwhelming because you're not alone.
Exactly. That's the kind of nearness that I think this text is talking about, like this feeling of being held, supported, loved.
Yeah.
Even while you're in pain.
It's a reminder that even when we feel most alone, there's a source of strength and comfort right there with us.
Yes.
Okay, so that's really comforting. But then the text goes a step further. It talks about finding strength in weakness. And that almost sounds kind of paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it?
It doesn't.
We often think strength means powering through, never showing any vulnerability, being completely self-reliant.
Right.
But then you have 2 Corinthians 12.9,
Right.
which throws a wrench into all of that.
Yeah.
It says that God's power is made perfect in our weakness.
Okay, but what does that even mean?
Right.
Are we supposed to just give up and let everything fall apart?
No, not at all. It's not about giving up. It's about surrendering control. Recognizing that we don't have to have all the answers or be super strong all the time.
Okay.
Think about it this way.
Okay.
Imagine you're trying to open a really stubborn jar.
Uh-huh.
You're twisting and turning and using all your might, but it just won't budge.
Right.
Then someone comes along and says, hey, let me try.
Yeah.
And they just use a different technique, maybe with a little less force.
Right.
And pop, the jar opens.
Yeah. Sometimes our strength lies in admitting we need help and letting go of the need to control everything.
Exactly.
And trusting that something bigger is at play. That makes a lot of sense. I can relate to that.
Okay.
But then there's this big question.
Yeah.
Why suffering at all?
Right.
What's the point?
That's a question that, has haunted humanity for ages.
Yeah.
And this text suggests that, yes, suffering can actually have a purpose.
Okay.
Romans 5.3-4 talks about suffering producing perseverance, character, and ultimately hope.
So it's not just random pain and chaos.
Right.
There's a point to it all.
Think about it like this. Imagine an athlete training for a marathon.
Okay.
They're pushing themselves to their limits. They endure pain, fatigue.
Right.
But through that, they become stronger, faster, more resilient.
Okay.
So could suffering maybe be like a training ground for the spirit?
Interesting. So it's not about avoiding suffering or denying it,
Right.
but about finding meaning in it, allowing it to shape us,
Yes.
refine us, make us stronger.
Exactly. Our struggles aren't meaningless. They can be opportunities for growth and transformation, even if it's hard to see that when you're going through it.
Absolutely. So what am I learning from this experience?
Yeah.
How is this shaping me?
Exactly.
Wow. Okay, that's a great point. I'm already seeing things in a new light here.
Good.
So we've talked about God's presence in our suffering, finding strength in weakness, and the potential purpose of pain.
Mm-hmm.
But what about hope?
Right.
Where does that fit in?
Hope is absolutely essential when you're in the middle of something difficult.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel like things will never get better.
Right.
But this text reminds us that there's always a reason to keep going.
Okay.
It highlights Jeremiah 29.11, where it says that God has plans for us, plans for a hopeful future.
Okay. That sounds good in theory,
Yeah.
but when everything just feels so bleak,
Right.
how do you actually hold on to that hope?
Imagine you're lost at sea.
Okay.
It's dark, the waves are crashing, you feel completely alone.
Yeah.
Then in the distance, you see a faint light.
Uh-huh.
That light, however small, gives you hope. It gives you a reason to keep going.
It's like a lighthouse guiding you back to shore.
Yes, exactly.
So this promise of a hopeful future,
Right.
even if it feels so far off,
Yeah.
can be a source of strength and motivation.
Absolutely, because it reminds us that our current struggles, they don't define our entire story. There's more to come. And it's worth holding on to that belief,
Yeah.
even when it's hard.
So we've got God's presence, strength and weakness, potential purpose for the suffering, and a beacon of hope for the future.
Right.
That's a lot.
It is.
But you know what I'm wondering?
What's that?
How do you hold on to faith
Yeah.
when everything feels like it's just falling apart? That's where I struggle the most.
That's a really honest and relatable question.
Yeah.
And this text really acknowledges that faith is often tested,
Right.
especially during times of suffering.
Yeah.
James 1.12 talks about this.
Okay.
It talks about the blessings that come from persevering
Uh-huh.
under trial. It's like,
It's like a tree with deep roots. When a storm comes, the tree might bend and sway, but
Right.
those roots,
yes.
they hold it firm.
They do?
Faith is like those roots.
Yeah.
The suffering might shake us, but if our faith is strong, it can help us weather the storm.
That's a great analogy. And it's not about gritting your teeth and pretending everything is fine.
Right.
It's about actively choosing to hold on to faith, even when doubts and questions arise. It's about trusting that something meaningful can come out of even the most difficult experiences.
Even when it feels impossible, we just keep choosing faith, keep trusting.
Yes, yes,
Okay. The text also talks about finding peace amidst the storm,
it does.
which sounds almost impossible.
Right.
Philippians 4.67 speaks of a peace that transcends understanding.
It does.
Okay, so I'm all for peace, but
Yeah.
how do you find peace
Uh-huh.
when everything around you feels so chaotic?
Yeah, it seems like such a contradiction.
It does.
But this peace,
Yeah.
it's not about the absence of problems. It's about finding a deep sense of calm and trust, even when things are really tough.
Yeah.
It's about letting go of our need to control the outcome
Right.
and surrendering to a higher power.
So instead of fighting against the current, you're learning to swim with it.
Exactly.
Okay.
And that peace often comes through prayer, surrendering our worries and fears, connecting with something greater than ourselves.
Okay, this is making more sense now.
Good.
But I still feel like there's so much more to explore here.
There is. We've only just scratched the surface.
Okay.
There's a lot more to unpack about finding strength in suffering.
Right.
But for now, let's maybe just pause and reflect on what we've covered so far.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
So we've laid some groundwork here talking about finding strength even while we're suffering.
Yeah.
But this text keeps coming back to this idea of Jesus. And I'm curious to explore that a little more,
Yeah.
especially this part about him being a source of comfort.
Yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit?
Absolutely. So this text really emphasizes that Jesus wasn't just this distant figure who preached about suffering.
Right.
He actually experienced it firsthand, which I think makes his empathy that much more powerful.
It's not just theoretical then.
Yeah,
He gets it
he gets it.
on a gut level.
Yeah, and that's incredibly validating for anyone who's going through something really difficult.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, even Jesus, this ultimate symbol of strength,
Yeah.
went through something similar. So maybe I'm not so alone after all.
It makes me think about those times when you're grieving
Yeah.
and someone who's lost a loved one comes and sits with you.
Yeah.
They don't try to offer platitudes or try to fix it.
Right.
They just hold space for your pain.
Yeah.
It's just so comforting.
That's a beautiful analogy.
Yeah.
And it speaks to the power of just being present with someone,
Yeah.
just offering empathy and understanding
Yeah.
without judgment or trying to fix things.
Sometimes that's all we need.
Sometimes that's all we need.
Yeah. So we've talked about God's presence, strength and weakness, the purpose of suffering, the importance of hope, holding on to faith,
Right.
finding peace in the chaos,
Yeah.
and now Jesus as this comforter. It's
Yeah.
like this text is giving us a whole toolkit for how to get through these times.
It's interesting you say toolkit
Yeah.
because I think those tools work best when they're used together.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay, I like that.
So it's like,
Like imagine you're climbing a mountain.
Yeah.
You need sturdy boots, a map for guidance, a rope for safety, companions for encouragement.
and each of those things is important.
Right.
But they all work together to help you reach the summit.
Yeah.
And in this case, faith kind of acts as that foundation, that bedrock upon which we can build resilience and strength.
Okay.
It's the belief that even when things are really tough, there's something more,
Right.
a higher power, a deeper purpose.
It's not about ignoring that suffering exists. It's about choosing to hold on to hope.
Yeah.
Even when it's hard.
Even when it's hard.
Trusting that something meaningful can emerge from these difficult experiences.
Absolutely.
And it's okay to doubt,
It is.
to be angry.
It's human to question why things are happening.
Yeah.
This text doesn't shy away from those raw emotions.
Right.
It acknowledges that suffering is real and that it hurts.
Okay. So it's not about pretending to be strong
No.
or putting on a brave face all the time.
It's about being honest with ourselves about what we're feeling. Allowing ourselves to grieve, to process, to question.
Yeah.
Recognizing that those emotions,
Yeah.
they're not a sign of weakness,
Right.
but actually just part of being human.
So it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
To feel the weight of our pain, ask why.
Yeah.
It's all part of the process.
Exactly. And, this text reminds us that suffering doesn't have to define us.
Okay.
It can actually be a catalyst for growth, a crucible where we forge resilience and compassion, and a deeper understanding of ourselves and the world.
So like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Yeah, but sometimes it feels like suffering is trying to kill us.
It really does.
But think about it like this.
Okay.
Imagine a pearl forming inside an oyster.
Yeah.
It all starts with a grain of sand, an irritant,
Right.
that gets lodged inside the oyster's shell.
Yeah.
And instead of rejecting it,
Yeah.
the oyster covers it with layer upon layer of nacre, eventually creating this beautiful, lustrous pearl.
Our struggles are kind of like that irritant.
They are. And that pearl is a result of the oyster's response.
Mm-hmm.
And it's the same for us.
Okay.
Our struggles can be the catalyst for something beautiful to emerge within us. It's about how we respond to those challenges.
So instead of seeing suffering as a setback
Right.
or a punishment, we can view it as a catalyst for transformation, an opportunity to learn, to grow, to evolve.
Precisely. And this text reminds us that even in the midst of suffering, we still have a choice.
Okay.
We can choose love, kindness, compassion.
Yeah.
It's easy to become hardened or cynical when we're hurting,
Right.
but this text encourages us to soften our hearts, to extend grace to ourselves and to others.
I think that's so important because when I'm struggling,
Yeah.
my first instinct is to shut down, protect myself, push people away.
Yeah.
But this text is saying that even in those dark times, we can still choose to be that source of light.
And love.
And love, yeah. And those choices, they ripple outwards.
They do.
They impact not only us, but those around us.
Exactly. So it's not just about enduring the suffering.
Right.
It's about actively engaging with it,
Yeah.
learning from it, choosing to respond with love, even when it's really difficult.
It's about finding that strength within ourselves to choose love.
Yes.
Even when it hurts.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
This deep dive's been really incredible. This text shows us how resilient we are as humans.
Yeah.
It reminds us that we're not alone,
Right.
that our pain can be meaningful.
Yeah.
And even when it's really dark, there's still beauty to be found, joy to experience, and love to share.
I feel like this conversation has given me a whole new way of looking at how to face these challenges.
I'm so glad to hear that.
It's not about avoiding suffering, but navigating it with grace, courage, and a lot of heart.
And remember, you're not alone on this journey.
Yeah.
There are resources available, people who care,
Right.
and a strength within you that you may not even realize is there.
Thank you so much for sharing your insights today.
It was my pleasure.
I feel like I've learned so much about how to find hope and strength
Good.
in the face of suffering.
That's wonderful.
And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Remember to hold on to hope.
Yes.
Embrace your strength and know that even in the midst of suffering, there is light, there is love, and a future worth fighting for. This text is so good at taking something as heavy as suffering
Yeah.
and finding those glimmers of hope, like those wildflowers pushing through cracks in the pavement.
Right.
It's like life just finds a way even when things are tough.
It's so powerful, right? This text isn't trying to sugarcoat the pain.
Right.
It's reminding us that there's more to the story.
Yeah.
Like if you look at a tapestry, up close, you might just see tangled threads and knots.
Yeah, imperfections.
Right, exactly.
But then you step back and see the whole picture.
Yeah.
You see the design, the colors, the beauty that comes from all that complexity.
And suffering can be like that,
Yeah.
You feel so lost, tangled up.
Right.
But step back. Look for the bigger picture.
Yeah.
How do our struggles maybe fit into a larger design,
I like that.
even if we don't fully understand it yet?
But I have to admit, sometimes when I'm going through something really tough,
Yeah.
it's hard to see anything beyond the pain. It's like we're supposed to find beauty and meaning in our suffering, but sometimes it just feels dark.
And that's okay.
Yeah.
We're not supposed to pretend it's not there or force ourselves to be positive.
Right.
But we can acknowledge the darkness and still choose to cultivate the light.
Yeah.
Seek out those sources of strength that can help us get through it.
So it's not about denying the negative,
No.
but about expanding our awareness to include the positive.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, one of the most powerful ways to do that is through gratitude.
Oh, okay.
It might sound a little strange to talk about gratitude.
Yeah, when you're hurting.
Right. But even in the midst of suffering, there's always something to be thankful for.
Okay, I can see how shifting your perspective, even just a little bit, helps.
Yeah.
Like, imagine you're stuck in a traffic jam.
Right.
You could get all stressed out and frustrated.
Right.
Or you could use that time to call a friend.
Yeah.
Appreciate that you even have a car to get you where you need to go.
Right. It's not about ignoring the inconvenience.
Right. But choosing to acknowledge the good things, too.
So gratitude is a way of choosing to focus on the positive. It's like a muscle we can strengthen.
With practice.
And this text even suggests that suffering itself can be an opportunity for growth.
It does.
Which sounds strange.
It does.
Our struggles can teach us lessons, help us become more resilient and compassionate.
It's like that saying, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
Right. But sometimes it feels like it is trying to kill me.
I know, it can feel that way. But think about it this way.
Okay.
How does a pearl form?
Uh-huh.
It starts with a grain of sand, an irritant.
Right.
It gets lodged in the oyster shell.
Right. And then the oyster.
Instead of rejecting it,
Yeah.
it covers it with layers and layers of nacre. Creates this beautiful, lustrous pearl.
Wow.
The pearl is a result of how the oyster responded.
Yeah.
So it's the same with us.
Oh,
Our
yeah.
struggles can be that irritant, and they can be the catalyst for something beautiful to emerge. It's about how we respond to those challenges.
Yeah.
So instead of looking at suffering as a setback, as a punishment, we can choose to look at it as an opportunity for transformation,
That's it.
to learn, to grow, to evolve.
Exactly. And even when we're suffering, this text says we can still choose love. We can choose to be kind, to be compassionate.
Yeah, it's easy to shut down when you're hurting.
Yeah. To push people away.
But we can be a source of light.
Yeah. And those choices have a ripple effect. They impact us.
Right.
And they impact those around us.
So it's not about just enduring it. It's about engaging with our suffering, learning from it,
Yeah.
choosing to respond with love, even when it's hard,
Yes. Finding that strength within to keep choosing love.
even when it hurts.
Yes. Beautifully said.
It's been an amazing deep dive.
It has.
This text has really brought to light the resilience of the human spirit, that we're not alone. Our pain can be meaningful.
Yeah.
And even when it's dark, there's beauty, joy, and love to be found.
Absolutely.
I feel like I've learned so much about facing these challenges.
Good.
It's not about avoiding suffering,
No.
but about navigating it with grace, courage, and a whole lot of heart.
Yes. And remember, you're not alone.
Right.
There are resources available, people who care, strength inside of you that you may not even realize is there.
Thank you for sharing your insights today.
It was my pleasure.
I've learned so much about finding hope and strength.
Wonderful.
And to everyone listening, thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you.
Remember to hold on to hope, embrace your strength, and know that even in suffering,
Yeah.
there's light, love, and a future worth fighting for.